and welcome to The Straw Hat with Rabbi David Wolkenfeld and Rabbanit Goldie Guy. We are the official podcast of Anshe Shalom B'nai Israel Congregation, an Orthodox synagogue in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois.
So we wanted to speak about Mishnah Club this week. We have a Mishnah Club participant who we have on the podcast, so we wanted to start by describing the program, what some of our goals are, and also not just goals and the program, but also a little bit about the content. Like we want the podcast to be a Torah podcast, so let's have some content as well. So let's describe Mishnah Club, what we do, and what we're learning.
All right. So Mishnah Club. Well, the idea behind Mishnah Club is kind of encapsulated in the title, right? It's like Mishnah, serious learning, and there are like pedagogical goals of mine that are giving kids the tools to identify parts of Mishnah. What does Mishnah do? Who's in the Mishnah? What are the teachers? And what's Mishnah concerned with? What's the project of Mishnah and how to read it? And then there's the club part, which is hanging out at shul and learning Torah with friends and having fun while learning Torah. So the sum total of it is that Torah learning becomes part of these kids' lives and is like a fun after-school activity for them, and which I think is what's happening. And it's a place where where they're engaging seriously in Torah and building friendship through Torah, which has been like kind of the most meaningful Torah experiences of my life, is where I've built friendships through Torah, and those relationships are really deep and meaningful, and I kind of wanted to model that and
that's how we see the shul, right? You want the shul to be a place for them to build Jewish community and to develop friendships that distinct from their siblings, distinct from their friends at school, that the shul should also be a place where friendships are cultivated and strengthened and where they meet people, and that the shul should be a place of Torah learning, not just what they do, not just a class at school, not just something they might do with a parent, but something they do with peers at their shul, with educators on staff of their shul are teaching them, and that's the piece of it. So this is like a reimagined. We had a Mishmar program 2 years ago. This is like the post-COVID reimagining of that. It's a little more condensed. Condensed. And I've been really, really happy to see we have a nice group of middle school kids who are learning with you every week, and we have a group of fourth graders and one third grader who as well, who are learning with me each week, and it's great. Like we've
got some kids in between who are coming in and out. They're not there. We have a sixth grader.
Sixth grade in
Chicago
is middle school.
Oh, okay.
I was not in middle school until seventh grade, but here
it's really confusing to me. Also, whenever we break up the groups, because I taught fifth grade before I came here, and that was part of a middle school. I keep telling the kids, and they're like, "No, those are the little kids." Sorry for any fifth graders listening.
It's so interesting. It's so like you see, like as the kids get older, they mature, and you can notice that as a teacher, as a parent, or whatever. Like as an observer, you see that, but also it's a little bit arbitrary at the same time.
We treat them all like big kids. That's also part of it, is right that they can do serious Torah learning and be engaged with Torah in a really meaningful way, even as kids, right? That they can have these tools, they can have deep discussions, even if they don't yet have the literacy. And that's kind of what I want to show them, is that the Mishnah is talking about stuff that we encounter in the everyday, which is why I chose like that transition, which is why I chose Masechet Bava Metzia. We're learning the second chapter of Bava Metzia in Mishnah, which is about returning lost objects and the mitzvah of returning lost objects. The mitzvah both on the there's obligations both on the finder and the person who lost the object to kind of figure out how to get to each other. And it's about relationships between people and our responsibility to other people and their stuff. And it's about respect for our property and how do we relate to our property in general. And where does God figure into all of that, right? How does God manifest in our mitzvot ben adam lechavero and our interpersonal mitzvot, where
Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I don't have the advantage of I don't get to study. I use your source sheets, your worksheets, and I'm with the younger kids while you're with the middle school. Can you say a little more? Yeah,
I think you can do this with the younger kids too. But like something that we brought up this past week was that the person who finds the object has a responsibility to make sure that as many people as possible know that the object, that he found the object, that they found the object, so that the person who lost it can plausibly meet up with that person and say, I lost so-and-so object. I lost my bracelet. It had this charm on it, right? I can tell that it's mine. I gave my simanim, my identifying factors, right? We don't want to give away lost objects to people who aren't the rightful owners. But so there's the obligation of the finder to go during the pilgrimage holiday when the most people are gathered at the temple and announce, I found a lost object. If you lost anything, come and see me and give your identifying traits of the object and claim your ownership. But the Mishnah interestingly frames it in terms of this pilgrimage festival in a time when, or perhaps at a time when, or speaking to an audience that doesn't have the pilgrimage festival anymore because the Beit HaMikdash no longer exists. Now,
we have the festival, just no pilgrimage.
Correct. We don't have the pilgrimage aspect of the pilgrimage festival, right? The regel is no longer involving your regel so much. And so it's really interesting that the Mishnah would phrase it this way. Instead of, go to a place with a large amount of people, like how we would phrase it in contemporary halacha, right? We'd say, like, go to shul and announce it after shul. I found something. Please come to me if you lost anything. Or put an ad in the paper or write it on Facebook that I found something. Come to me if you lost anything. The Mishnah could have easily said, announce it in the most public way possible to reach the most amount of people. And instead it says, when the Beit HaMikdash is no longer standing, right? It says, come at the time of the Beit HaMikdash when we're all gathered for this festival to worship God in the central place of worship in Yerushalayim. And a teacher of mine taught it this way, that my teacher Judy Goshen teaches that this is kind of like a hint of the editors of the Mishnah saying there is an aspect of redemption and an aspect of divine of revelation that we would see in the gathering at the temple, in the act of returning a lost object, right? Reuniting a person with their lost object, making that effort and showing that you care about the other is a form of revelation of saying, I care, right? This is a mitzvah in God's Torah, and this is God manifesting through the mitzvot ben adam lechavero. So we bring a little bit of redemption to the world when we treat others with respect, when we treat others' property with respect. And this, of course, isn't a small literary aspect of the Mishnah, right? So it's you'd have to find, you can track it in other places. How often does the Mishnah frame, obligations in terms of the Beit HaMikdash when the Beit HaMikdash is not standing?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like what, it's like when you think of the Beit HaMikdash, right? It's the place where heaven and earth meet. It's the place where God's presence, rests on earth. It's a place where people go to worship God through korbanot and tefillot and
to meet God in the most direct way.
And it's also a place for returning lost objects, right? And so it's like it's really interesting. That's like a powerful statement about like, right, this most holy place is also where we gather to get. That's if someone were so inclined and wanted to turn this into like a little drasha direction, you would say so too our mikdash our little shuls are also a place of it's a place of prayer and study. It's also a place for meeting human needs and being responsible for one another and turning up for one another, finding out who somebody stood up in shul with their arm in a sling, so that's okay. They might need some help with something, and how can we help them with that? Or they're there was I think in medieval Ashkenaz there was a custom that if any member of the community had the right to stop tefillot in shul if there was somebody who owed him money or something, or hadn't responded to some claim. Like you could right before Baruch you could stop tefillot cannot, because Chaim Shmerel owes me $25 and we cannot until I want my answer. Really interesting.
Can you imagine if we applied that to you haven't replied to my email from 3 weeks ago? That would take a while.
We had an old family friend, a very close friend of my father's, who lost a jacket in shul. I think somebody else took home his jacket, which is a pretty easy thing to happen.
Happened to my family.
The same jacket. Yeah. So he week after week he said you check, somebody has my jacket. You have my jacket, and nothing happened. So he finally got exasperated. He held up the matching pants and said, "Take the pants as well, okay? You have the coat, you might as well have the full suit." And then I think that shamed the guy into checking the labels, and he got his suit back. Intense. So yeah.
No, but that's I think the overall message of saying, right, that we're when we come together around tefillah, around learning, it's and the relationships that are formed through that. It makes our relationships sacred relationships. It underscores the sacred aspect of our relationships that exists no matter what, right? In the interpersonal. But when it's centered around shul life, I think it brings it home, really, of saying, meeting your friend in shul and checking in on them because you're at tefillot together and you're like, oh, God is here in this other person.
That's great. So we'll get to hear from a Mishnah Club participant.
She may not say it like that, but
she's been learning.
But she's getting the message.
She's been learning with me, so it's a little less.
Oh, come on! I'm sure she gets that too.
A little less God talk, a little bit more. Don't stick your pencils up your nose. Different ages.
Oh boy!
This is actually a good Parshat Mishpatim for like Torah Sheba'al Peh, for the oral Torah. We really see it coming out in force in the mitzvah of the Torah, and I always think back at Parshat Mishpatim, like in this context. I took a course in college on like modern Jewish Bible commentary, which really was focusing on like the 19th century Renaissance of Orthodox Bible commentary, and the entire syllabus was Parshat Mishpatim and Parshat Kedoshim, like really like the one chapter of Mishpatim and one parak of Parshat Kedoshim, which was very like filled with mitzvot, and we had to do Rashi and Ibn Ezra, and then we had to do all of the like this like resurgence of Orthodox Bible, Ketav Kabbalah, and then Netziv, and the Torah Tamima, and the Malbim. And
is that why you quote the Netziv all the time?
That is maybe no, it is not. That is it's not. I was about to say that's when I was like first introduced to the Netziv. It's not true because I was introduced to Netziv in yeshiva before I went to college. But I came to appreciate his agenda from that class, and there was this this like over and the teacher of the the teacher of the class was Jay Harris, who wrote a very, very influential book. Not influential to me, okay, a book called How Do We Know This? But it's back in print now, so it must be influential to other people as well, which is about, like, it's the history of this question of how do we know this? Minayin, what is the relationship between the written Torah and the oral Torah, which is like this major topic of the Gemara and the halachic midrashim, and then it's all the Rishonim have to, the medieval Torah commentaries and have to like relate to this question as well, and it becomes, in the modern period, he argues in this book, like a defining feature of the emergence of Orthodoxy in the 19th century is like this renewed interest in this question and defending the relationship between the oral Torah and the written Torah, because the way we live our lives is based on the oral Torah, and the written Torah, the Chumash, doesn't say very much at all about how we observe Shabbos, and says the plain sense meaning of the Chumash is sometimes different from the Halakha in some really important ways, like an eye for an eye, for example, famously in Parshat Mishpatim. So we have to figure. And at various times in history, like rabbinic Judaism has been attacked for corrupting the original meaning of the written Torah, and so it became really important for Sam Raphael Hirsch and the Netziv and Tavik Kabbalah and the Malbim to actually here is like a really sophisticated understanding of the words, and now you see how the oral Torah is actually connected to and kind of can come from or alludes back to the written Torah. So like I don't know, like now that we're in like these like meaty mitzvah laden parshiot, you come to appreciate like, oh yeah, like you learn Bava Metzia, like now, okay, like this is Parshat Mishpatim, like this is like we should tell the students to like make sure they're in shul this week for Parshat Mishpatim, because this is the this is what they're or one of them, I guess it's also in Kitetse, but it's this is a Seder Nezikin relevant parsha, and but not with the psukim alone, the psukim as they're understood by, or as the with the lens of the oral Torah as well.
Right. I think making it make sense, the fact that I teach, or just an image that comes to mind of how I teach the relationship between the Torah Shebichtav and the Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's like an image of two hands next to each other in the workbook that I used to use. And I'm like, oh, that's how I presented it to my Mishnah Club students. And but you really do have to present like a compelling case of here's how the rabbis were staying loyal to the text, that really what they say goes hand in hand with what the text actually means to convey, even if it's not what it literally says. So I guess I was raised in that tradition as well, of teachers who were arguing for that in a strong way.
It's really interesting because, I think at one point, 200 years ago, the people, challenging traditional Judaism or Orthodoxy would say, oh, like the ancient rabbis were corrupting the pure meaning of the biblical text. I think now there's like a trope of, the rabbis were like super creative.
Yeah.
Leaders. They, were like, that was great. They totally reinvented Judaism,
Look at their power. Look at their...
Yeah, and I think I think if you believe in that the oral Torah was also from God, was also revealed, I think there's a range of ways to understand that. I think
that they really go hand in hand somehow, and we're really missing it if we don't understand the deeper connection. Yeah,
so. And they're different. Like I think if I'm recalling correctly, I think you have like on the one hand you have the Malbim who is like amazing. He thinks that he believes he's discovered like the deepest rules of biblical Hebrew grammar, such that
that's awesome.
Like if you read, like this is why, this is how it means that really, 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 if you really understood, and he tells you all the rules and he explains it there. And so if you're like a Malbim guy, or woman, like you're done. Like you don't have to read any other commentary ever because he like solved it. Like he explains exactly how the rabbinic midrashim like emerge from like a really deep understanding of the text.
Yeah.
I think. There are others who would, like Samuel Hirsch, who says, who also like has very like creative and deep readings of the psukim, but he gives the analogy that the written Torah is like really secondary to the oral Torah. Like the written Torah is like it's like the in comparison to like the notes you take in lecture.
Yes. Yeah,
right. Like
I've heard that.
Right. So the oral Torah, that's like comprehensive. That's the full lecture with all the information we need: how to keep Shabbos, how to observe kashrut, how to live our lives. And then the written Torah is like, oh yeah, God just gave you, these are like some notes, It's like what do you call it? The PowerPoint, here's the PowerPoint, that'll help you jog your memory and remember the full lecture, which is really like downplaying the written Torah, which is really sort of somewhat counterintuitive, but like, but it serves the purpose of helping us appreciate the written Torah, even if we can't understand exactly how it, emerges directly from the written Torah.
Right, but that's the importance of the minayin word. That's what we always. So that'd be something if I had a Gemara club. That'd be the next phase, right? They'd learn all the key words and what they do and how they function. So the minayin always says we show deference to the most authoritative source, which is the Torah, and you always have to figure out minayin. How does this come from the Torah itself? This is Rabbanit Goldie, and it is January 13th, and I'm here with Shira Berkowitz doing a little interview post Mishnah Club. So thank you so much, Shira, for being here.
Okay, yeah, like it did take a little time to get here, but I'm glad we finally got here.
I'm so glad that you're here with us. So Shira is a participant in our new Mishnah Club, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you like about Mishnah Club, what we're learning.
Well, there were a lot of things since there's only been like a few weeks of it. We haven't gotten to all the things that it said, but like that the email said about it. But like I'm pretty sure we still will get to it. Like I really like how it said like. Also, even if we didn't get to it, like we still got pizza. So like we get to like read texts and like when you translate. It doesn't just need to be in words. Like you can also do pictures.
Okay, so we're learning Mishnah Bava Metzia. We're learning about lost objects, and sometimes we learn it and we explain it with different words, and sometimes we explain what the Mishnah is teaching with pictures. Yeah, and we've also done some games together. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
Plus, I think what you said you really love is the pizza.
Yes, I do love the pizza.
What about being with your friends?
Well, that was good. Like usually like we're just like eating and stuff, but like sometimes like we usually talk.
So Mishnah Club is also about having fun with your friends, and you get to come to shul and have a good time and see each other during the week and make Torah learning a part of your week, which is really exciting. Now, Shira, besides Mishnah Club, what are some other programs or events that you love going to at shul?
Well, on the high holidays, like, it's really fun.
Ooh.
Like, there are questions. And also, I really love Kiddush, especially when it's sponsored. There is very good food.
Okay, you love Kiddush. I know when we talked a little bit before, you mentioned You mentioned some other classes that you like going to at shul.
Yeah, like groups.
Ooh, you like going to groups?
Yeah.
What group are you in?
One of the A-News. I can't really keep track. How many are there?
One of the, I think you're in Na'areinu.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think you're in Na'areinu. That means our youth.
Also, I like how like the sidurs have pictures, so that the pictures can so like if you're not sure, maybe the pictures can tell you. Like for the Shema, I'm pretty sure like there's a kid learning, but like on Osh Shalom, I'm pretty like there's a dog with holding an olive branch, and that kind of meant peace.
That's lovely. So you like the Koran youth sidurim that we use during groups. You like that. If you have one last thing to say about ASBI, which you said you've been going to your whole life as long as you can remember, one last thing that you love about shul, about this community.
It has more than just like it has events, not like just like there was a barbecue and stuff. Like there were like it wasn't just pray, do shul things, like do Jewish things. Like we have events too. Like there are
Hanukkah
barbecues, Hanukkah parties.
It's a lot of fun.
There are events, not just like, okay, we had to come to shul to do Jewish stuff. It's like events.
It's a place where you both learn Torah and daven,
and
you have fun.
Like the barbecue, like it was like there was face paint that didn't just go on your face.
You like the face painting? Yeah. Okay, I'm glad. We'll bring it back. We'll bring it back next time. Okay, thank you so much, Shira, for joining us today.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I hope to see you again next week at Mishnah Club.
Yeah, I probably will.
And on Shabbat before then.
Yes.
So we have a guest scholar this Shabbat, and it's I guess as we're recording this, please God, the continued tail end of the Omicron wave, and people are drifting back to shul. So hopefully this will encourage a few more people to drift back to shul. It's a little different schedule than our typical scholar in residence schedule. We're not having a dinner in shul because I think a lot of folks are not yet having big dinners, and as we're recording this, we haven't yet been authorized by our medical task force to resume indoor eating. So he is going to speak, though, Friday night before dinner, meaning after tefillot on Friday night, before you go home. You'll stay in shul for a little bit, and there'll be a lecture. So, if you're listening to this, just trying to get that information out to everyone who needs to hear it. Your dinner's going to be a little bit delayed Friday night. It's still the winter. It'll be a really early dinner. It's fine, but, you're going to go to this lecture first. And the topic is really cool. It's the third base of English that never was. I also in college learned about this from a different course, Professor Gaffney, who's a cool. lovely man who is a professor at Hebrew University, but he used to come to Harvard every couple of years and teach as a guest visiting lecturer. And so it was like an ancient Judaism class. And so Julian, who was a Roman emperor who wanted to roll back, after the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, Julian emerged, and he's like, no, that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to revert to the ancient Roman pagan religion. And he thought a way to undermine Christianity was to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. Because the Christians said, look, God has rejected the Beis Hamikdash, God has rejected the Jews. And so he said, oh, all right, I'll rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And he actually started to do so. And then he was defeated in battle against the Parthians, in Mesopotamia. And nothing ever came of it. And, 2,000 years later, we still are waiting for the Beis Hamikdash. Professor Gaffney, I think, pointed out, it's really interesting that this, it sounds like a kind of big deal that, the Roman emperor, tried to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, and they started construction, and this is not recorded, as far as I remember, anywhere in rabbinic literature. This memory of this event has not been preserved in Jewish sources, at least not in the Talmud, is the best of my recollection.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting question. It seems like a big deal for Jewish history, and we didn't preserve that memory in a major way. So that's the topic of Rabbi Dr. Shlomo Zuckier's lecture. I should have said something. I should have introduced. He's an old friend. We were in the Gush together. I was in the Gush in 2008 as my last year learning for smicha. I was taking my final smicha exams, learning in yeshiva in Israel, applying for jobs, and then eventually coming back to America and starting a job. He was still after high school at that point. I think it was his maybe third year in yeshiva after high school. He had stayed for a while. He was young and was already like a very
devoted Talmud of Rav Lichtenstein.
Yeah, like in his shir and not just in his shir, but like thriving in his shir and understanding. And I think when he had, I think Rav Aaron wrote like his recommendation letters when he like applied to stuff afterward. Like they were a very, very close relationship. Even he's probably the youngest person, or among the youngest people to have still had that kind of really, really close Rebbe Talmud relationship with Rav Lichtenstein Zatzal, who died just a few years ago. And so since then he was learning at finished college, and he was in Smicha at Yeshiva University and in the Kollel there, and the advanced post-Smicha program there, and then he also got a graduate degree in I think religion. So he's like a
doctorate.
A doctorate. Yeah, sorry, not just a graduate degree, a PhD in fact. And so he's
he taught a lunchtime shir at Columbia when I was an undergrad in the small room in the back of the cafeteria. So I went to that sometimes.
Nice. Awesome.
And I was his wife is also an accomplished scholar and a lawyer. And I was her chavruta.
Oh, very nice.
For my first year of the graduate program at Stern.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
She is not joining him this
Yeah, sorry, not part of it. But they are, pretty cool.
Yes.
Together.
He has a fellowship at Notre Dame, so he is in the Midwest for much of the week this winter, and so this is and he flies through Chicago on his way back home to New Jersey. So this is a chance for him to
we're excited to have him.
Stop off, yeah. So very, very excited to have him for this weekend. And those who listen, will please. Oh, and the other thing I'll say, about this unusual schedule because of, everything being everything. We also scheduled a Zoom presentation that'll be on Sunday. So those of you who are not able to hear him live, you can listen to him lecture on Sunday morning, and we're going to have a viewing party at the shul on Sunday morning if you want to have that sort of hybrid experience, or you can, in the comfort of your own home or whatever, you can listen. So I hope we'll take advantage of this. He's a special scholar. He's a mensch and so a good person. So I encourage people to learn and join us. We wanted to take a moment this podcast to just say some words in memory of a teacher and role model and mentor of ours who died this week. Rabbi Simcha Krauss, alav shalom, was for half a century a leading figure in American Modern Orthodoxy. His career began as in Utica, New York, and then from there he went to St. Louis, where he served very successfully as a rabbi for 12 years before ending his rabbinic congregational career as a rabbi in Hillcrest, Queens. I think he was there for 30 years or something, a very, very long time. After retiring from the congregation, he and his wife made Aliyah, and there he would join the faculty of Yeshivat Eretz Tzvi, where he taught several iterations worth of students who really appreciated having such a distinguished scholar and experienced rabbi on their faculty. In his youth, he had studied with Rav Soloveitchik and with Rav Hutner, two of the leading lights of mid-20th century Torah and the things he learned from them and his appreciation for them really was filtered through his own teaching. And then in the last years of his life, he directed was senior rabbi at the International Beit Din, which is a Beit Din that takes the cases that others won't take, really leaving no stone unturned to free agunot and sort of looking at precedent that exists in halacha that isn't always used as freely, and just finding ways to free women from abusive marriages that need work. I first met him because our wives were paired together as chavruta and Drisha. Esther Krauss had just retired from being the founding head of school at Mayanot High School, and I guess she joined the scholar circle at Drisha, and and somehow Sarah got paired with her as a chavruta, and they became, they became very friendly, and so we got invited to spend Shabbat at their home in Hillcrest, and then in subsequent trips to Israel, we lived in Israel. I guess that year, the next time we lived in Israel, we were neighbors of them, and we had a lot of Shabbat meals together. He was very helpful to me as I was figuring out my first rabbinic position at Princeton. During a very stressful period of time where I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, or at least that step of my life, he was very encouraging and provided a lot of wise wisdom, and just always just very just caring person, cared about his students. One other memory I'll share, he came to Princeton while we worked there. I don't remember the circumstances of what he was, like how it came to be that he and his wife were in Princeton over Chol HaMoed's Pesach. I don't, maybe they're passing through or something, but Chol HaMoed Pesach is Rav Soloveitchik's yard site. So we asked him to speak for the students, about Rav Soloveitchik, and I vividly remember what he said. And I guess it's sort of relevant to Daf Yomi, so I'll share it right now. You can say he talked about why is it that Yontif cancels mourning, okay, right? Yontif, when the holiday occurs, if somebody's in Shiva, someone's buried, God forbid, 2 days before Pesach comes, then Shiva is canceled. And why would that be? Because, Shiva is about sitting on the floor not wearing shoes, and celebrating on Yontif is about eating good food. So why can't you sit on the floor without shoes and eat good food? You could do both, okay? You could do both. And the halakha doesn't allow for that. And just Rav Krauss said, echoing Rav Soloveitchik with a tremendous amount of passion, that the halakha is expressing an inner emotional state. And yes, you could sit on the floor and eat good food, but that's not, the point is not the external markers. The point is the internal emotional state that the mitzvah is supposed to generate and inculcate. And those two emotional states are not consistent. And that's why Yontif cancels Shiva. And he spoke about, he shared with such enthusiasm and passion, somebody who was in that shir in Princeton, hearing him speak about it, somebody who grew up in a, metropolitan modern Orthodox community who heard Rav Soloveitchik quoted to them, throughout their childhood and into their adulthood, came out of that presentation by Rav Krauss and said to me, now I really appreciate, what Rav Soloveitchik was accomplishing in his scholarship. It clicked for me hearing Rabbi Krauss speak about him with so much love and passion and speak in that way.
Just what's been I also knew Rabbi Krauss through Esther. Esther who is Shetibadel Chaim Arukim, a lifelong learner of Torah after being a Torah pioneer for women and breaking ground and giving women the Torah education they deserve. She's just a wonderful human. And so I always had a sense, I was around him somewhat. And when I worked at SAR, I saw him in the coffee shop and I would talk to him, and I just always felt completely humbled and confused by the humility of this great man who just wanted to chat about what I was learning or teaching. And through reading the eulogies and tributes of his students and the friends who are his students, I've just been really, really struck by his great humility and care for every student that he had. And how he, the stories of listening to him, that he introduced himself to children as, hi, I'm Simcha. It's just mind blowing to think of all the, not only was he trailblazing and caring for people in their most vulnerable times and caring for the people who might have been, downtrodden by halakha and trying to find solutions for them and caring for the most vulnerable. He also was just a regular human, and that's how he walked around in the world. And that balance of doing great things with your Torah knowledge and caring for people and being the embodiment of chesed and kindness, like a loving, kind God, while also just being a human to others.
Yes, they're like great people who are really lousy people.
So
they're people who
No, it's the people maybe that are great scholars and lose their touch with people, and that he is the embodiment of what Torah is supposed to make you.
Or they're great leaders and they're and they leave and the human touch is lost, or the person.
It's so unique and such a loss for the Jewish people, of course, for his family, for his students, and for the Jewish people at large.
Yeah.